Good afternoon. Have you ever received a present so beautifully wrapped that you didn't want to open it? Maybe you were afraid of tearing it apart and ending up with an unholy mess of scrunched up papers. Well, if the gift was presented by a Korean friend, chances are it was wrapped in a bojagi, in which case you needn't have worried. A bojagi is a traditional Korean square-shaped piece of fabric used both in daily life and in the celebration of special events. Your Korean friend surely put a lot of care and love into wrapping your gift in a bojagi, probably closing it with a special knot. The act of wrapping a gift in a bojagi is itself an expression, wishing good luck, longevity and prosperity. Instead of tearing at it like wrapping paper, gently untie your gift and save your bojagi to be used again. And yes, you can and should reuse your bojagi, because now it is your treasure to maybe pass along when you decide to share its good wishes as part of a gift to someone else. And by the way, anything can be wrapped in a bojagi. All sorts of things. Even food. From very small objects that fit in the palm of your hand to much bigger things. Okay, maybe not that big. I said not that big. That's better. If you reuse your bojagi to wrap a gift, there are a number of creative knots you can use to tie it, thus sending a variety of wishes according to the season. A hydrangea knot, a hairpin knot, a dumpling knot, a top knot, a flower knot. Be creative, but also be mindful of the receiver. An older person with arthritis might have difficulties untying a knot. Your bojagi might be made of several pieces stitched together like a patchwork. This is called a Jogakbo. All of these scraps of leftover fabric tell a story. They're also another sign that your friend has put a lot of work, time, and love into the wrapping of your gift. Remember this the next time you receive a gift. I remember my wedding in December 1920. Based on our zodiac signs, an auspicious wedding date was chosen by our parents. I worked with my mother for months to make my newlywed underdress, a red skirt and a green Taogori jacket. I was very proud. But to be honest, I didn't sew the most remarkable piece of my outfit, which was my outer robe. It was a beautiful green silk top coat, a wansam, that had been passed on to me from the community. It had large sleeves, featuring the 5 traditional colours of Wang Center. That gorgeous topcoat actually covered everything else, and nobody could see the hard work I had put into making my underdress. Of course, it was nothing like the sumptuous yellow silk dress worn by the Empress Sunjang-hyo, with its phoenix motif, but I felt like a princess wrapped in that green silk. When the ceremony began, my future husband entered, carrying the most traditional gift, a wooden goose, a symbol of fidelity and devotion to each other. The goose was wrapped in a lovely silk bujagi made by my future husband's mother. When I saw it, I instantly knew I would cherish that piece and keep it in our family always. My father received the gift. Then it was time for my future husband and I to exchange traditional bows and cups of wine before being officially announced as a married couple. Village was invited to the ceremony that followed. After our wedding, my husband and I spent 3 months in my parents' house, and then we moved to his parents' house in a procession. I had wrapped all our belongings in large bujagis that I had sewn with my mother. I made sure to pack the wooden goose, delicately wrapping it in my mother-in-law's silk bujagi. Years later, I gave that bujagi to my daughter. Everyone remembers when in 1952 we had to leave in a hurry. I was only 10 years old. We left our house and village with many of our neighbours. We packed all that we could in large bujagis. All the women packed their bedding and blankets and made smaller bundles for their valuables. Every child had to carry bundles too. My mum had carefully wrapped her wedding dress that she'd made with her mother and put it in one of her bundles. It was out of the question that she would part with it. I wanted to pack my fabric doll sewn by my grandmother, but my mum said that I could not. We had more important things to carry and we had to hurry. Besides, the walk south would be long and tiring and maybe dangerous. We could not carry too many bundles. The walk was very exhausting. I cannot remember how many days we walked, neither where we slept nor even if we had food. I don't remember if I was scared, hungry, thirsty. It's all a sort of fog in my mind. But the one thing I never forgot, the saddest part of all for me, was that I had to leave my doll behind. I remember the dinner table my mum used to set. Things always seemed so perfect and delicious. I was very hungry as I watched her putting food on the table, but I had to be patient. We needed to wait for my dad, who always came back late from work, and for my big brother, who was studying late too. Every night it was the same. Once the table was ready with all the food on it, my mum would take a big piece of waxed paper to cover the table, and then an even bigger piece of beautiful fabric to cover the food and keep it warm and free from flies. The fabric was a bujagi she'd made with dozens of small squares stitched together. To me, it looked like a landscape with mountains, rivers, and trees, all in geometric shapes. Every time she arranged it, I would marvel and let my mind wander through that imagined landscape, waiting for the delicious dinner hidden underneath. Then my dad and my big brother would finally arrive. And like a magician, my mum would pull up the bujagi and the paper below by tugging on a little tie sewn in the centre, and ta-da! The tasty dinner would be revealed. Are you still repairing that bujagi? Yes, it has many tears. I'm replacing some of the squares. Aren't you tired of that old piece? I remember once, I think I was about 10, I spilled my soup on it. I knew you'd be so upset because you'd loved that piece since your childhood. I tried hard to clean it before you got back from work. I managed to remove the stain, but it was still wet when you arrived, and of course you noticed right away. Remember? I was literally petrified waiting for your response. But you were very calm. You didn't say anything at first. Then you gently took my hand and pointed out each little piece of the bujagi with my finger. You said something like, "See, that bujagi is made as a Jogakbo, a patchwork. And you see that little square in the center? That was the bujagi your great-grandmother received on her wedding day. It wrapped a wooden goose. I think her mother-in-law made it. Imagine, it is really old." That comment made me feel even more guilty, and you kept going. "This square in the left corner was part of my newlywed dress, and this piece here is from your dad's jacket." You kind of labeled each square of it. I was impressed that you could remember where each piece came from. But I knew that for you, all of those fabric pieces are part of your history, your landscape. I kind of get it now. I see your imaginary landscape too, and I like it. I remember the last time I saw my mum repairing our family bojagi. I was just a teenager then, but I suddenly appreciated the beauty of the piece. It was a sort of revelation. I had an urge to learn how to sew and make Jogakbo myself. I asked my mum to teach me. First, she showed me how to save all kinds of fabric scraps, then how to arrange them, and finally all the different stitches to join them together. She even taught me special stitches to add embroideries too. I started to make small bojagis to wrap presents for my friends, then medium-sized ones to wrap my books for school. My friends at school were curious about my sewing work and sort of impressed with the skill it took. Later, I started making bigger things like curtains and huge room dividers, sewn like bojagi but on a larger scale. Now I make very big pieces shown in art galleries and museums. I wish my mother was around to see this. She would be so proud. I have saved a very precious one that I call our family bojagi, the one I once stained with soup. When the time comes, I will pass it on to my youngest daughter. She's 10 now. But I've noticed already how she loves to collect the tiny scraps of fabrics I drop in my studio. Sometimes we may feel ourselves to be just random pieces, alone and without meaning or a story. But when placed together in a beautiful composition, there can be great harmony, meaning, and use. As people of all colors, nationalities, generations, and heritages, we discover that we are all alike. And if placed together, we can be even more beautiful and meaningful, and no potential is wasted. Together, we can be transformed and repurposed to work for what keeps us united, our common and precious home.
For the textile department at the Met Museum as a volunteer for 2 decades or so, right? So she's seen a lot of bojagi traditional materials in their collection, and then when I had this exhibition, I encouraged her, you should make a contemporary story. So this is her interpretation as a person who's working with a textile and also who admire the Korean culture. So I hope that you enjoyed, and then